The doors locked with a dull mechanical click, and that's when the room went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A few people instinctively reached for the handles, pulling once, then again, harder this time. The doors didn't move. No alarms, no announcements. Just a locked room and a growing sense that something had gone wrong. Someone laughed nervously, assuming it was a mistake. Another checked their phone for signal. In the corner, a man in work gloves and a faded uniform stood quietly, watching the control panel mounted near the wall. No one paid attention to him. They were too busy trying to figure out how long they'd be stuck. A voice broke the silence, asking if anyone knew how the security system worked. A few people shook their heads. Someone suggested forcing the door. That's when the man near the panel spoke calmly, almost casually, saying that pulling harder wouldn't help. A few heads turned, surprised he'd said anything at all. Before anyone could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, then stabilized. The tension in the room spiked. This didn't feel like a simple delay anymore. The man stepped closer to the panel, adjusting something with practiced ease. Still, no one questioned him. To them, he was just part of the background. Only when the room's ventilation shifted, quietly but noticeably, did people start to look at him differently. Not because he demanded attention, but because whatever he'd just done had changed the situation. And suddenly, the question in everyone's mind wasn't how the doors locked, but how he knew exactly what to do. Whispers began to circulate. "Who is he?" someone asked under their breath. No one knew his name. No one had noticed him before. He didn't answer. He simply moved with quiet confidence toward the central control unit, pressing a series of buttons that seemed almost instinctive. Every step he took made the locked room feel smaller, the air heavier. A few people tried to watch, leaning closer to see what he was doing, but he remained focused. It wasn't arrogance, it was precision. And as he worked, the room's tension grew. The locked doors were no longer just a problem, they were a test, and everyone sensed that someone in the room held the key, even if they couldn't see it yet. Someone made a joke to break the unease, but it fell flat. The room's silence swallowed the attempt. The janitor, or that's what everyone assumed he was, didn't look up. He seemed completely in control, calm in a way that unnerved the onlookers. Something about him suggested this situation was exactly what he had prepared for, even if no one else had. Minutes stretched longer than anyone expected. People started shifting nervously, pacing or tapping on the walls, but the man didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced at the digital readout on the panel, adjusted a dial, and the subtle hum of the ventilation system changed again. It was almost imperceptible, but suddenly the air felt less tense. Everyone sensed that a shift had occurred. Eyes finally started following him. The curiosity, the anxiety, the unspoken realization, they all landed on the man in the faded uniform. No one remembered the last time they had seen someone so understated command attention without saying a word. And just as they began to question who he really was, a soft click came from the doors, a tiny sound, but enough to send a wave of suspense through the room. The doors didn't swing open immediately, but the subtle click signaled the start of change. Murmurs spread across the room. Was it unlocked or just a trick of the mind? The man didn't react to their attention. He moved calmly to a nearby console and typed a few precise commands, fingers steady, almost hypnotic in their rhythm. Some in the room began to realize they had underestimated him. He wasn't just a janitor. Every small action, the way he handled the panel, the timing of each adjustment, revealed a level of skill no one expected. Their casual assumptions about him shattered quietly but completely. The lights flickered once, briefly casting shadows across the walls. Tension spiked again. Someone reached for the door handle, hesitating, waiting for confirmation. And then the man turned his head, catching their gaze, not with a smirk, not with a word, but with a calm, unreadable look that made everyone pause. Finally, the locks disengaged fully. The doors eased open with a soft mechanical hum. People exchanged glances, relief mixing with disbelief. They had assumed chaos, they had assumed incompetence, but the truth was completely different. The quiet, unassuming man had controlled the situation all along. As he stepped away from the console, he dusted his hands lightly, as if finishing a routine chore. No applause, no recognition, only the subtle shift of perception in the room. Everyone who had dismissed him now realized they had been entirely wrong. And the room, once tense and uncertain, settled into a calm, almost awed silence. People began moving cautiously toward the exit, glancing back at the man in uniform. No one spoke loudly, but the air was charged with a mix of relief and newfound respect. The assumption that he was just a janitor had completely dissolved, replaced by an unspoken acknowledgement of his skill. He collected his tools and quietly walked toward the maintenance closet, each step measured. The room's occupants exchanged quick, amazed looks. They had been so certain of their judgments, so sure of their assumptions, but their perceptions had been upended without a single raised voice. Some whispered apologies to themselves for underestimating him. Others simply nodded in silent recognition. The subtlety of his actions, the calm precision, and the invisible control he had maintained throughout left a lasting impression far stronger than any confrontation could have. The manager on duty, who had been observing from the back, finally approached him. Instead of words, a simple nod and a brief approving smile passed between them. No fanfare, no dramatics, just quiet acknowledgement that competence and professionalism don't need to announce themselves. By the time the last person left the room, the story of the evening had shifted entirely. What had begun as panic, doubt, and underestimation ended in calm, respect, and understanding. The janitor walked out without a word, leaving behind a lesson the room would not soon forget. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones you least expect.